How they play, yeah. We represent that SWAC, that MEAC, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee, stay. Just tune into the HBCU Sports Lab with Dr. Bill, Mike and Charles, and I'm time.
Welcome to episode 75 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, the show that is covering the sporting HBCU diaspora, i.e. all things HBCU sports for the institutions, large and small, from NAIA to NCAA Division I, FCS to Division II. We share insights on the information on HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs, and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. We are filming from our home studios and sending a signal at the top of the hour to KCOH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper and the beautiful home of Texas Southern University in Houston, Texas. Man, that's a mouthful. What we doing?
Well, you said a whole lot with that.
Yeah. Gentlemen, it's good to see you all this week, in spite of everything going on, including COVID-19. Some people will say the second pandemic that is going on in terms of racism across the country in different frameworks. But we're here. It looks like you all are doing well. I see my colleague, Professor Bishop, as many say these days. He has Professor Mike Washington back there on the camera, JSU helmet in the background. I mean, he's looking sharp. Book. I see you got a book or two back there. Okay.
Yeah, I got a book or two. I got an original 1972 Jackson State program. So.
Wow. When did you, before we get in all of that, excuse me, Mike, for a minute. You know how I do with this. I get a little excited. How did you come across that? You know, I mean, that wasn't there before, so I've noticed it. Give us a little backstory while you're holding out on your good buddies here. We're going to demote you and take away your professor status if you don't get your share.
Well, you know, a little exhaustive research in terms of looking for some HBCU memorabilia, and I came across, especially looking for some Jackson State memorabilia, and among my own archives, you know, I was just kind of looking across the world, if you will, via the net, looking for some more HBCU memorabilia, and lo and behold, I came across this 1972 game day program that has Walter Payton on the cover. And lo and behold, guess who they're playing? Prairie View A&M Panthers. So
I saw that.
Okay, so
I don't even want to know what the score was.
Well, you know, that was back then. Prairie View was playing some ball back then, so it's probably a competitive game as we've kind of taken our up and flows, as you know more than anybody, Mike. But with that, since you've broken down the framing of it that way, we're gonna bring back your title, Professor Bishop.
Okay, thank you.
So with everybody's on seriousness, so we have great colleagues, Charles Bishop and Mike Washington. I'm going to shift to Mike Washington. Outside of the announcement, because we'll get a chance to really dig into it, because our first guest of the show, and really the big guest of the show today, we'll be sharing with some potential guests we'll have in some upcoming weeks a little later on. But we will have none other than Dr. Charles McClelland, the commissioner of the SWAC. So outside of the announcement of the SWAC, which is going to be the reason that we've actually are going to provide you with 2 full hours of HBCU sports news today, and a little more than that, because you know how we end the show with Rob Calloway with the HBCU Sports Report, and he will be back on the air today. What news outside of that, if any, do you have for us, Mike Washington? We'll start with you. Any big-time news we need to consider?
Yeah, big-time hire at Texas College. My dog, I say he's my dog because, you know, as you know, I am a big-time Cowboys fan, been raised that way. But my folks I'm one generation from being raised in the East Texas, born in San Antonio, but Texas College named that former Dallas Cowboys player, defensive end Greg Ellis, as the Steers' new head coach. An intriguing move, but definitely he brings a wealth of experience as both a player and a coach. He played for the Cowboys for 12 years. He also had a couple of stints with the Raiders. So his leadership extends beyond the field, and this comes to us not only from social media, but from HBCU Game Day. Got to give them and social media some love. As my sources, I also have relatives that live in Tyler that went to Texas College as well. They also text me as well, so I got to give them some love as well. They'll be listening in. But his leadership also goes as CEO of Play Now Enterprise, which is kind of a multimedia company. But it's a very exciting move because you have a big name coming to Texas College in that East Texas region. So it should boost some of the recruitment for Texas College. So folks around Tyler, Longview, if you're from those, as they say, dim parts of Texas, you're very familiar with the move, and you're really excited. So news of the day, big time.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that did catch my eyes twice when I looked at that. And while you're still a big-time Dallas Cowboys fan, I have shuffled that to the side because of everything that's going on. I'm just not a fan of the NFL, so I guess I'm a post-addict Cowboy fan. But I'm sure there's enough fandom out there that y'all keep me in the loop, so certainly can understand the necessary reverence you have for that move. In all seriousness, it's incredible in a lot of ways. And I'm always preaching innovation from a business perspective. And while there's some things about this that are obviously different, it would be a challenge for me not to recognize that part of it and say, this is innovative, this is different. And if you can't do it on one side and you continue to do the same things, maybe it is time for you to be more innovative in your approach. So from that standpoint, I'm going to say it's what I've said about all these hires. It's an opportunity and waiting, and we'll have to judge it by everything that takes place. So I do give kudos for Texas College and stepping outside of the normality when it comes to coaching hires. So it'll be interesting for that. Before I go back to Mike, if you would, I want to give out to some of the folks that have found their way to the show. Appreciate you all joining. I know that we didn't get the information out that we were having a 2-hour segment, but you all find a way to bring it to us. We have Donna G. Glover, as many people know her, Franklin Nelson, fraternity brother there giving it, Jay Mack, representing Morgan State in Atlanta, big-time photographer that has traveled literally around the world. Everything. Jimmy Wilson, big-time Prairie A&M Booster Club member. I see somebody sent Doc a hat. Yes, I'm announce that after Charles does his thing and give proper due. I have a shirt to go with it. Excited about that. Michael Lee, big-time Southern and SWAC, big-time Southern booster, even bigger time SWAC follower in a lot of ways. He says, what's up? Diane Weber, the one and only Texas Southern University big-time booster out there, bringing it, representing the women extremely, extremely well in all that she does in terms of a big-time fan. Anthony Johnson is out here, continues to give love and get it done in a lot of ways. So just wanted to give out some of those folks that continue to make us. Our partner on the media side, AD Drew, is checking us out. Hopefully you got a chance to look at their show earlier today that we taped yesterday. Man, we really went into some big-time news. We're going to see if we can broach on some of the subject as I believe we had a great show. So if you haven't caught that, go check out Brian and AD, Sports Rap, as they bring it like none other, as they're intimately involved in regards to bringing you HBCU Sports Lab, part of that BCSN family that we recently joined. George Atterbury, Ricky Dorsey are some names that have chimed in. Nelson has come in here talking about Steer Nation. Yes, sir. We give it all some love out here big time as people are chiming in. We talk about all the sports. Obviously, we're right here in SWAC country, and so we lean a little bit in that direction. But without further ado, as I've taken up quite a bit of time there, Charles, do you have some more news outside of, again, the SWAC announcement that you want to share?
Sure. Let's take a look at some news happening in HBCU women's basketball. Coppin State. They named Laura Harper, former WNBA player, as their new head women's basketball coach. So since the conclusion of her playing career, she's worked as an assistant coach at 4 NCAA Division I institutions, as well as a season as the head coach at one of the top college preparatory schools. And that comes to us from Anidon, the guys over there at Anidon. And then some more news around women's college basketball. Jackson State, their head women's basketball coach, Tamika Reed, she signed a 4-year extension to be the head, continue to be the head of Jackson State women's program. She did a bang-up job this past year. The Lady Tigers, they won the 2019 SWAC regular season championship. They were the #1 seed going into the 2020 SWAC tournament before it was canceled. So she's, this is a statement from AD Ashley Robinson, Coach Reed. She's done a tremendous job in terms of elevating the program in 2 short years. She led the program into its first SWAC regular season championship in over 10 years. So kudos to both of those young ladies in terms of Laura Harper getting the job and Tamika Reed with the extension for Jackson State.
Yes, indeed. Nice point. Way to get that in there, Professor Bishop. Way to sneak that in there. No, but a 4-year extension is nothing to laugh at. I mean, that's a big-time move and a nice commitment. I believe she deserves it in terms of what she was able to do. That was in her second year that she was able to do that. So that's big time. Basketball got another year extension. So certainly solid in terms of what's going on in the world of Jackson. And my understanding that you had an interview with the VP of Athletics at Jackson State University. Tell everybody where they can get that information.
Sure thing. You can check out that interview with AD Ashley Robinson on the 1400 Club podcast. You can see it on all of your social media accounts, Spotify definitively, where you can take a look at. We are at 51 episodes now, so we had a huge podcast that's celebrating the first 50 episodes. But go check it out. You can find it on Spotify.
Congratulations on that, CB. Congratulations.
Yeah,
good job.
50 plus episodes, no joke. Mike is over there. I'm pushing and nudging him with Joe Clay. In regards to them considering doing something podcast for Prairie View A&M athletics. So that'd be interesting.
There's no longer a consideration. I've been talking to Joe and Roland, and I know they'll probably be listening. There's no longer consideration.
Oh, I like that. Breaking news right here. We touched a little bit. Okay.
It is now an official admission.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's what's up.
Let's grow the space. Let's grow this. We got information to get out there. Let's get it to the people. I did want to make sure that represent those Alabama A&M Bulldogs. Last week I had the shirt. I did share that Coach Stevens, women's soccer coach. And obviously we have big-time Alabama A&M Bulldog fans following us, so we want to make sure we gave some love for them as I got the shirt last week. Also, George Atterbury is repping Howard U, former Bison Express executive board member and MEAC fan. Yes, sir. We give much MEAC fan love over here. Come on over here and join the fun. As we going to give you much love. Howard, we had your AD on last couple of weeks. You probably heard it. If not, you can go back in the archives. Go to YouTube at HBCUsports.com, inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Go ahead and check it out. You can also follow us on Twitter at inside the HBCU Sports Lab as well. Following me at Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, that's DrKenyattaCavil on all the social media platforms, or at least Twitter, Facebook, as well as Instagram, just to give you some updates there. Chiming in, as we talked about, Alex Hine is on.
J Mac would have to do this. He said 1972, Jackson State 16, Prairie View 3. I told you I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know. I knew that. J Mac, I knew that.
He is a photographer, so he's a historian as well. That's what pictures do. They set a pictorial framework of history, and I guess he made sure he's going to tell you back if you ain't careful. He took the picture.
Yeah, I did not want to know the score.
George said he wants your book. He think he going to Amazon and we'll support in terms of inside the HBCU Sports Lab. I appreciate that, George. We certainly putting in the work, so all the support is definitely appreciated in so many different ways. With that, before we get into this interview, this is BSU, Bowie State Bulldogs, Cap. Many of y'all recognize the Bulldogs out
Bulldogs.
there. And so I told y'all, if you send me the gear, I will represent. And so, Coach.
Oh, man. Wow.
Let's represent Bulldogs. I got the cap. I got pom-tom that I went ahead and pull up, as you see.
Oh, you got a Bowie State pom-pom? Really?
Yeah. It's black and gold, so it fits the schematic up here.
I don't care, but it's a Bowie State pom-pom.
Man, you
share the love, Doc.
You are cold-blooded, brother. and I'd be remiss if that is from Coach Antoine Swoole. He brought a SWAC championship to Prairie View when he was coaching cornerbacks here under Coach Henry Frazier III.
Yep.
On the defensive side of the ball, he had a legendary defensive side with Coach defensive coordinator there, bringing in a lot of the wood as we actually created a name.
Yeah,
absolutely. You remember the nickname, Mike?
Yep.
Purple Haze.
Purple Haze defense.
I still have me a shirt on that. So just wanted to get in there.
Well, full disclosure, that was the name of the defense, but it was also the name of a beverage. So, both were of important significance.
Yeah, so any minute we probably have Commissioner McClelland in. So as soon as he comes in, just let us know and we'll jump right in that interview. Any additional news before we get into that interview?
Absolutely.
That you want to share, Mike?
Yeah.
There go the shirt there. Bulldogs, baby.
Yeah. Absolutely. Scott, it's not only about football and basketball moves. For those of you that follow African-American lacrosse, Hampton has named a new coach. Chaz Woodson has been named the new lacrosse head coach for Hampton University. It is his first college gig, but keep in mind, if you follow lacrosse, he's been at several high-caliber preparatory schools. He comes highly recommended. He played Ivy League ball. So he was a program director and head of Everglades High School in Coconut Grove, Florida. Now, Coconut Grove, Florida, if you got a name like that, and it's preparatory school, you got to have a little bit of money. So he comes with a lot of experience. He is a Hampton Roads native. So if you're part of the Hampton alumni social media feed or the lacrosse, it's called Blackster's Log. It's African American lacrosse players blog. A lot of the African American community is very excited. He takes on the reins behind the legendary Lloyd Carter, who retired and started the program. Rashad DeVoe took over the reins for a year and then mysteriously left and went to D3 powerhouse Amherst, and there was kind of a state of unreadiness. And here we have, Chaz Woodson. He brings a lot of youth and excitement, and this comes on the heels of them signing Eris Brown, the son of Jim Brown, as a highly touted recruit out of California. They've named a couple of other new recruits, and from what I'm hearing through the recruiting networks, a lot of African-American top recruits in lacrosse are very excited that they brought some more youth into the program. So, I'm dialed in just because of my son. So it's not that I know this, but I see a lot of this, and there's a lot of excitement behind this hire. Even though he's new, this is his first college gig. There's a lot of excitement. So,
yeah, I certainly saw the hire, but I'm glad that you provide that nuance, that breakdown in there, because I think that's extremely interesting when you talk about what he may bring to the table and what people are saying out there, and the fact that people are exciting, particularly with everything going around. It makes a lot of sense that this could be a significant move in the lacrosse landscape when you talk about Hampton University, specifically as it regards to lacrosse. So that's very fascinating. Anything else you have there?
You talking to me or CV?
Let me go back. Let me go back to Charles and let you.
Dr. Bishop. I'm sorry. Talking to me or Dr. Bishop?
Exactly.
Well, I thought it was interesting news, and I'm sure we'll see a lot of universities making this decision going forward here. But Morehouse, they will go full virtual this upcoming fall. So I think that's a news of note in terms of moving forward as we transition now into moving into this fall semester.
Looks like we have Dr. Charles McClelland signing in now. And so we'll jump right into the interview as we'll get him ready to go as he on mute. And now we're ready to get in there. Welcome to the show. Good to have you. It's Dr. Charles McClelland, Commissioner of the Southwestern Athletic Conference. As we get it, the big news of the day, obviously, that has taken place over the couple of weeks, we've had several of the HBCU conferences decide to essentially postpone the fall season. And I think it's important to make that notation that we're talking about fall season right here. And as of what took place last night, you had the Southwestern Athletic Conference, the presidents and chancellors under the leadership of Dr. Charles McClelland as the commissioner, postpone the fall season and push it into spring 2021. One thing that a lot of people have noticed about that move was the fact that a plan of action was put out there. But with that, we'll give you first up to just talk about what took place in that meeting before we get into some additional questions in regards to the decisions deciding to postpone the SWAC fall season.
Well, it was a very robust discussion, one that we have continued from previous discussions before. We have a pretty engaged group of presidents and chancellors, and they're pretty active in their sports programs on member institutions. So it's a pretty easy discussion. One of the things that I'm probably most excited about is that we really have a cohesive group of SWAs, athletic directors, coaches, presidents, and chancellors. So as we have these discussions, the majority of them will start in the individual specific sport, and it works its way up through the process. So by the time it gets to the president, we can tell them, hey, the coaches have chimed in, the SWAs have chimed in, the ADs have chimed in, and this is the direction that we would like to go. And then they put their input on, we make those adjustments, and we're able to push it out. And ultimately, that's what the conversation was on yesterday. There was a preliminary report that put out that said it was imminent that we were going to cancel the season. That report was 100% inaccurate. I actually got beat up a little bit by refuting that report, and it came out when I was actually on a call, and they said, hey, what about this? And, my response was, this isn't accurate. And, it wasn't accurate for a number of reasons. One, the presidents and chancellors had not gotten an opportunity to meet. Two, there was never an imminent decision, although we could kind of read the tea leaves and understand we were headed down a road that was going to be difficult to play. But that's not just the Southwestern Athletic Conference, that's the entire nation. If you had to read the tea leaves to say whether or not Houston is going to have to shut down or reopen, I think you could look at the numbers and tell the direction that you're going, that, hey, probably going to have to wear a mask, and we're probably going to have to sit down somewhere. This thing is going to take us all out. So that same process went into what we were trying to do. And furthermore, and again, I know you didn't ask this question. When people jump out and do those types of things, I don't think they realize that livelihoods are at stake. Presidents are trying to make decisions on whether or not they're going to keep, people employed, not employed. If they're trying to negotiate a contract or get out of a contract that's hundreds of thousands of dollars, this type of leaked information could disrupt what they are trying to do. And in one instance, we had one institution that was working on getting out of a contract that was a substantial amount of money. That leaked information could have cost them not to be able to do that. Consequently, they would have had to lay people off. So this is a real life matter. So these are the type of conversations that are going on in the back room. And ultimately, we all agree the health and safety of our student athletes and all constituents involved would continue to be our number one priority, and that we needed a path forward. We worked diligently over the weekend. Chairman A.D. Ashley Robinson started to plan, and he worked with the athletic directors to get everything solidified and agreed upon. We presented it. It was approved. And here we are next day doing interviews with Dr. Kenyatta Cavil.
I like that. And I see that.
Why did you have to say that? Really, you just blew his head. Dr. McClelland, I can say I've been knowing this man for 30 years, so you can say it, but I'm telling you, you just blew his head up.
It's not going to be able to fit on the screen, but I'm going to try to keep it under this hat. I also noticed that you have I believe the Twitter handle for the SWAC added to the tagline there. I like that, so I had to go back in there and add mine. Make sure I take those. In all seriousness, one follow-up question before I share and ask the other team, as we're calling them now, Professor Bishop and Professor Washington. That's an inside joke there, Charles, so I'm sure that we'll tell you a little more about that. But with that, we have, in consideration, the NCAA's designation calendar for sports. I believe it's fall, winter, and spring. What is your weekly schedule like in reviewing the athletic college landscape, specifically during what many people are saying these two pandemics mainly have been described specifically as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic? What does your weekly schedule look like?
Well, if I could, I'm going to tell a story, and I've allocated a lot of time because I think I cut you short last time. So I'm going to be with you, and I'll be able to go through all of your questions. But I remember my sister's husband invited us to their house for Thanksgiving. And the mother-in-law, she cooked a turkey. So we got there the day before and we ate turkey. We ate turkey that night. We ate turkey for Thanksgiving. We ate turkey Thanksgiving afternoon. And we commenced to eat turkey for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the next 5 days. And when it was time to go back to Houston, I told my dad, I think I'm all turkeyed out. I don't think I want it. And that's how I feel with these Zoom calls. That's ultimately what I have done for the past 4 months, literally with commissioners 7 times a week, with the conference membership at least 3 times a week, with the Council of Presidents on 4 separate occasions, and then throughout with NCAA officials, sponsors. So to be very honest with you, in a given day, we're on at least 4 conference calls. And keep in mind, we have a commissioners group that's made up of 32 conferences. So that's the Autonomy 5, that's the Group of 5, which are football playing institutions. And then you have the 12 FCS conferences. And then you have the 10 Division I conferences, which are basketball conferences. And those are broken up into those subgroups. So each week we have 2 CCA calls, which are all 32. We have 2 CCA 22 calls, which are the FCS conferences along with the D1 basketball conference. And then we have 2 FCS conference calls. And then every Friday we have a cluster call with the SEC, the SWAC, the Big South, the Atlantic Sun, and the OVC to talk about name, image, and likeness and what's going on with that with the Congress and potential litigation. And that's just on the books standard. That doesn't even include all of the impromptu calls that are made. So we talk to our athletic directors at least once a week. Sometimes we push that back a little bit. We've talked to every coaches group. We've talked to many of them on multiple occasions. So just like that Thanksgiving turkey, I think I've had enough of it.
Yeah, I can understand. 4 Zoom meetings a day. I thought I was doing something with 1, 2 a day, but no, 4. Yeah, I would be zoomed out as well. Mike, if you would go ahead and ask a follow-up question.
Yeah, Dr. McClelland, what was the actual process that ultimately led to the decision to postpone the fall sports calendar season? We're aware that this does not include any decision that's at this time only for other sports, but only winter sports such as men's and women's basketball, of course, football. What was that final process like, and what did it look? How did it feel? What did it look like at the end of the day?
Well, Mike, even on this show, we had opportunity, I guess about a month and a half ago, to talk about our plan. And we talked about, we had different plans for different scenarios that we've been planning. And not to go too in depth in that planning process, but if you recall, we said that the 17th of October was our drop dead day. If we could not play football by the 17th of October, then we did not see a path forward, and we felt like we needed to move it to the spring. Well, if you look at October 17th and you start to back October 17th up, it meant that we would have had to have an 8-week acclimatization period. Our football players have not played football in over a year now. So we needed that time for them to be able to come in and have strength and conditioning. So if you take October 17th and you go 4 weeks back, let's just say for mathematical purposes, you're in September. And then you go 30 days back from that, you're in August, right? So you're in mid-August before, at the minimum, that you need to bring your student athletes in. We're the 20th of July. It did not take a genius for us to figure out that it was going to be next to impossible for us to safely bring our student athletes in on August. Now, our original plan was to wait until the 30th of July to be able to figure that out. There were some things that happened, but with the COVID numbers being where they are, going in a direction and listening to all of the health experts, we're still in the first wave. We haven't even begun to see the second wave. Houston is out of beds. Alabama was out of beds. Some of those beds are freed up. There's record number of coronavirus being tested and confirmed every day. We've had record number every day for at least the last 8 days, and we're still just getting the 4th of July. Testing is becoming an issue. And even with testing, the amount of time that it takes for the test to come back is not reliable, because you're talking 7 days. We've even heard 14 days. So the trend was, even if we waited to the end of July, it's going to be next to impossible for us to meet that mid-August date of bringing our student athletes in to be able to get just to a shortened season for October. It just wasn't enough time. So for us, it made enough sense to say, hey, again, let's not try to fit a square peg in a round hole. Let's realize it is what it is. We've given it a good shot. Let's move it to the spring. And I would say the last thing, Mike, we did take some criticism, and, I hear criticism. I'm not oblivious to listening to what's out there about, the CIAA, they made their decision, the SIAC made their decision, and the MEAC made their decision. And what I have said to that is all three of those leagues had to make decisions that was best for their leagues. We had to make a decision that was best for the Southwestern Athletic Conference. And if we take a little bit more time to do that, then that's our prerogative. And the reason why we took more time was because as a conference, we did not allow any of our membership to bring in student athletes. So there was nobody on campus. There was nobody having to be tested and isolated. We pushed those report dates back. We pushed all report dates back. So we had the luxury of being able to see what's going to happen, look at all of the things that were involved, and being able to shut it down without having to put people in harm's way. So we felt like we did take more time, but we had more time to take because of the decisions that we made earlier on.
Thank you.
With that follow-up, just give you some comments. As you talk about blowing up my head, Mike Washington, we might just do the same for Charles. B Suave Live says, awesome commissioner. Jeffrey Rumlin of FAMU, proud that FAMU is coming to the SWAC with the commissioner at the helm. Great plan in the midst of a pandemic. So your head can get big as well, too.
Charles, he's getting big, too.
So, yeah, make sure you share him the same love you showed me. he was there at Prairie View with us too, so you can do that. Charles,
Exactly.
with that, since he is from Mississippi with you as well, since you can get in on some of this too, why don't you follow up with a question? Yeah. I think y'all went to the same high school. In fact, is that
definitely the same junior high? Yeah.
Okay.
He's not a Charger, so don't make that mistake.
Oh, I knew it. There we go.
Same junior high. Is it still there? I mean,
it is. I wanted to ask this question, and it was kind of a follow-up on what Mike was asking, but in terms of the plan moving forward, how did you all get to the sort of the optimal number of games for football that'll be played in the spring, especially when looking, I guess, at the potential of games in the spring and the fall, kind of the health of the student athlete moving forward, especially with a sport like football?
Well, I think that's an excellent question, and to be extremely honest with you, I'm not quite sure we are at that point or we are at the optimal. We might have too many and we might have too few. We don't know. The thought process, though, Charles, was to try to overlay our fall football schedule on what was already an existing spring practice football schedule. So we know that in the spring we have 15 practice days. If you're like the coaches that I've had to deal with, you can do that over the course of 6 or 7 weeks. I don't know the exact time frame, but my coaches, they would start on day one and they would finish with that spring football game on the last day. And every Saturday there was a spring football game. And we tried to use that as a basis because it was a concern about bringing in student athletes, playing football in the spring, and then turning around and having to get ready for fall. So what we tried to do was condense it. There was some data out there that suggested, how long we felt the season should be, how long it takes the body to recover, all of the things that needed to go into consideration to make sure that we don't put the student athlete in additional harm. So we're trying to save you from COVID-19, but we don't want you to blow your knees out or your ankles out as well because we're putting too much pressure on you. So we took all of that into consideration and we tried to lay it over that existing spring practice that the NCAA allows you to have, realizing that additional legislation would have to be enacted for us to play a fall sport. But that was the reason why we had that 6 week. And if you dive further, and we're planning on putting this schedule out hopefully within the next couple of weeks, but if you dive further, there are 2 bye weeks in there. There's another bye week that everybody takes off for a basketball tournament. So, and then there's a bye week, which you could either have that 7th game or not, that we'll have our championship game on the 30th of April, and you'll have a week bye before that championship game. But if you chose to play another game, you have that option to do so. So there's rest that's put within this schedule. It gives you 6 games that you can play for in your Division II outside of your division, and it even leaves you an opportunity to have a week or 2 off if you choose to. So we wanted to have deliberate intentions in making sure that, again, health and safety of student athletes. And again, if you ask me, is this optimal? I probably would say no. People will say, are you putting stress on the students and moving it to the spring? Probably yes, more than what was in the fall. But again, we do take into consideration they're young, they're vibrant. What goes on in spring from a football perspective, we felt we could overlay and have some of those same mechanisms in place from, a health and safety standpoint, from a standpoint of human resources, making sure that we have the requisite amount of people to be able to cover all of these sports. And I know, again, I have a tendency to answer questions you didn't ask, but I'm going to go on and answer this question. We have enough sense not to have a football game, a basketball game, a baseball game, a volleyball game, and a soccer game all on the same day. I know you didn't ask that question, but let me go on and put that answer out there.
Sure.
I'm glad you do that, because some people will say that, it's foolishness in regards to having, spring football. And maybe some of that is in consideration of having that much going on, or in tops of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is based on the trajectory of what is looking like with positive tests, whether there's a vaccine, penicillin going on, whether there's the update in regards to a decrease in the hospitalization rates, obviously, most importantly, the death rates. It's all contingent of those things. But a part of this is also from what I would call a cultural perspective. So to follow up on Charles's question, and that's Charles Bishop there to you, Dr. McClelland, is with the playing SWAC football in the spring of 2021, it is anticipated that it would would it include what I call the sporting HBCU diaspora. And what I mean by that, for those that are not used to that nomenclature, we're talking about the HBCU sports culture, which includes the classic games, HBCU marching sports, which obviously includes the band, and the HBCU athletic aesthetics, which is essentially all things, fans, tailgating, spring homecomings, maybe spring fest that some people have. Are all those a part of what would be included in this season if it's possible that we play it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the idea. You know, we wanted to have a robust football season, a robust volleyball season, a robust soccer season, and that includes parents and fans and bands and the whole life. You know, we said again, if in fact the coronavirus is this tough come March and April of next year, we won't have to worry about it. We'll all be dead at the rate that it's killing everybody, right? We won't have to worry about any of it. We're going to have to do something to get it under control. We know that the vaccine has been expedited. You know, when this came out originally, they said 18 months. They're now saying December, January timeframe. So that gives us January plus a 2-month buffer in order to be able to come out with a vaccine or either curtail the virus to where we could play. And that plan means that we want everybody involved. Spring Fest now becomes homecoming. Bayou Classic now is a part of Mardi Gras. The Prairie View Grambling game at State Fair Classic now is a part of a festival there in Dallas, Texas. The Magic City Classic now is a spring festival here in the city of Birmingham, and you can go on and on. You know, the beginning of the year games, if you want them there, we can place them there. The end of the year games, Jackson State Alcorn, we can place them there. So it gives us that ability to have a robust football season where you can tailgate, where you can get all of the things that you are normally wanting to see within a football game. The difference now is that it'll be 80 degrees in Houston. It'll just be March, April instead of 100 degrees. I shouldn't be talking about it. I love Houston, but you know, it doesn't cool down until late October. So
yeah, but you telling the truth. you definitely
Right.
tell the truth.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on a question before I push it back to Charles and then Mike. In lieu of that framework, taking a deeper dive of that HBCU culture, that sporting HBCU diaspora, as I like to uniquely call it, there was specifically, and you alluded to some degree, that with the one designated non-conference game format, has there been any consideration in terms of the partnership that currently exists with the MEAC and the ESPN SWAC MEAC Challenge and or Celebration Bowl to revive it, to incorporate it in the spring, or is it too early for that? And if so, would there even be considerations to look at something like that?
Yeah, I think definitely there's considerations, and we have work to do. I've yet to have an opportunity to reach out to Commissioner Thomas. This has been a whirlwind ever since we announced. I did have a brief conversation with the members of ESPN, but not necessarily about the revival of the Celebration Bowl of the SWAC Challenge. But if you look at our scheduling plan, we have flexibility to be able to play the Celebration Bowl, and we did that intentional. So when you start talking about some of the bye weeks, we wanted flexibility. So if we needed to move our championship game up a week, we have the flexibility to do that, to be able to play a Celebration Bowl. But keep in mind, the SWAC and the MEAC are the only two FCS institutions that do not play in the FCS playoffs. So some people say, well, how are you so bold to put your plan out? Well, I'm not bound by the same things that other FCS conferences. If they have no championship segment, then they really don't have anything to play for. We have a SWAC championship game. So I'm not quite sure what the plans are in the MEAC because they don't have a championship game. So if they don't have the Celebration Bowl to play, will they play? I don't know the answer to that question. My assumption is that they're going to want to play, but we were in a much different position than any other FCS conference in the nation. So we wanted to solidify what we were doing but at the same time leave flexibility in case we could revive the Celebration Bowl, just in case the MEAC does want to be able to have some synergy with what we're doing. But again, we don't know if that matches up. We don't know if we will even have that ability through Disney and ESPN, but we just wanted to program and plan. As we say, we have to plan for everything. That was one of the things that we did plan for.
Sure.
Certainly, and as we incorporating some of these questions, I'm passing it back to Charles. Some of these questions are incorporated with some of the things that's going on with the live feed. So we're trying to make sure that we make it interactive.
Yeah.
With the questions that are coming in with our fans, we have our basic framework of questions, but in those we're intermingling those questions as well. So thank you for your consideration there, Charles.
I love it. I would much like to have fans to ask questions. So I'm here, and no holds barred. Whatever you want to know, please ask.
Sure. Certainly. With that, Charles, go ahead and follow up.
Sure. When you take a look at the decision on fall sports, has there been an opportunity to explore the current television broadcasting agreement as it relates to the fall sports, including football, women's soccer, and volleyball?
Well, not necessarily. Keep in mind that ESPN, which is our television partner, we have linear TV and we have digital TV. Because this is so fresh, they don't know what other conferences are doing. They don't know where the pandemic is going to be at that particular time. Plus, there are already existing coverage that they're planning on. It's going to be a crowded television season. It'll be great for consumers, but it will rely on us to be able to go out and try to find innovative ways. So I can imagine you'll probably see a lot of our content digitally, either on ESPN3 or ESPN Plus. But I do feel pretty confident that we will be able to get some of our games on linear television where you can turn in, dial in. But, the one thing that I like about technology, ESPN3 is just the same as ESPN2 or regular ESPN, with your high definition and good internet. So we want to expand it, but we also are going to be understanding that ESPN has to be understanding. They could very well say, no, you didn't do it in the fall, but we fully anticipate them to embrace, and which they've already said they understood and they embraced the move, and they're going to do everything that they can, to really show SWAC football and SWAC athletics in the spring.
Sure.
Thank you for that. If you would, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. McClelland, I think, before we stated that, certain decisions you've made have put the SWAC in a great position financially and from a budget standpoint, but there's always questions asked regarding, revenue specific sports, football, basketball. There's a broader context. You got to consider expense side. You got to look at budget increases, and with the latest announcements and the economic dispositions relative to any other FCS conference, where do you see the SWAC stands right now, considering the landscape, considering SWAC expansion of FAMU and BCU, and now postponing things off to the spring? Where do you see the SWAC is presently? Or can you give us the feeling?
Yeah, if I could use one of those 1991, 92, 93 Prairie View jargon, we're blowing up, baby. FAMU and Bethune-Cookman has re-energized our efforts from a standpoint of sponsorship. I think this decision is going to kind of slow it down some, but we still have seen a high propensity for our sponsors to want to come join us because they can see the future. We'll have COVID-19 clauses, so we're still signing deals, knowing that if we don't have fall sports, we'll push it to the spring, and if we have to push it back, we'll push it back. But we want them to be a part of what we have going on here within the Southwestern Athletic Conference. When you're talking about overall fan base, our fans are already been, the best fans in college football, clearly the best fans in FCS when it starts to come down to just sheer numbers. But you're bringing in Bethune-Cookman, you're bringing in Florida A&M, and I think one of the telltale signs that I saw today that probably surprised me more than anything, we put out a plan that we felt was best for our student athletes. We put out a plan that we felt was best for our conference. For it to get picked up nationally and talked about nationally, And for me to see an article here in the Alabama newspaper to say SWAC got it right, SEC needs to follow SWAC, I think that really goes to show how far we've come in such a short period of time. And you say me, I cannot take the credit. There are a lot of smart people, people such as you three, that talk about what we're doing to get the word out and the message out. But I can say quite clearly, our athletic directors, our presidents and chancellors, our SWAs, our coaches, our equipment managers, our trainers, everybody is on one accord. And when you have everybody moving in one direction with the same goal in hand, it makes it a lot easier for you to get to where you want to go. And that's what we are experiencing right now. We are experiencing a re-energized part of something that is hard for me to even capture or explain, but it's there. You know, it's that it factor that we have right now. And it seems like even in the midst of this pandemic, we've been able to do some things to push our program and our brand forward. And I just want to continue to ride the wave because there are a lot of smart people behind this wave, and I just want to honor them and do right by them.
Yeah. Thank you. And if you'll allow me, I know I did say you, but definitely the leadership team. I don't want to blow your head up too much, but definitely the leadership team with the SWAC has made some decisions that have put the organization in a great place. So I don't want to. I joke around, but I don't want to short side them as well. If you'll allow me.
No problem. We appreciate it. And we didn't take it as a slight. I just know when I get back into the office and I take credit for all that, save myself some good.
I like that. All joking aside, I feel like that sometimes with my co-host.
You understand what I'm talking about?
See, Doc, that's humility right there. Man.
How about that?
Hey, the commissioner's rubbing off. What can I say?
How about that?
What is on the business side of this, and this is kind of a question that's mixed in among our question with some of our fans, and I'm gonna mix two of them in here. And I think one of these you kind of answered earlier, but just for some clarification, let's put it that way. In regards to the business side of sports, people were excited and wondering, what does that look like? You asked about ESPN television and where they are in that space. And some people talk about the fact that some of the bigger conferences have, the multiple television frameworks, and professionally call it full television rights, secondary rights, tertiary rights. When you go back to the table to negotiate the television deal with ESPN, and I think you answered this before, even once on this, but for those that are interested, what does that mean in regards to looking at other television companies or tiering your television framework in that nature? How does that look in regards to that? And the second part of that is, I think you answered the question in regards that you're not going to stack all these sports on one weekend, multiple levels. And I'm not sure people are really clear about the designation of how different it is from HBCUs potentially at the NAIA level, Division II level, or even at the FCS level, and vice versa, that many of the conferences that I know in the SWAC have more than one trainer, more than one doctor. The ability to contract out doctors is something that seems that people are not familiar with in that space. Can you provide some more context to that, since people are still concerned about that we're not going to be able to stack all of this on top of each other, and somehow we don't have the logistical capability to get this done? And maybe I'm reading a little too much into that. That's part of it, but please answer that.
All right. Well, I think you answered it for me. We're not stupid. So we understand, that we can't schedule these sports and not have adequate, trainers and equipment managers and doctors and things of that nature. I go back to my days at Texas Southern University. You saw Doc Harvey run out on the field. You saw Doc Andrews run out on the field. But before them, in the middle of them, and behind them were a team of doctors that ran out on the field, right? So when you start talking about what we have at our disposal. A lot of people don't know this. Our doctors physically was at every basketball game. Our doctors physically were at every football game. We had student trainers, yes, at some of our ancillary events, but every member institution had what we call an emergency action plan. It's mandated by the NCAA, and it talks about having adequate coverage, and based upon that coverage, what is your next plan? How far are you from an EMS station? How far are you from a hospital? How quickly does it take for 911 to come? Who do you have that's over that? And in the city of Houston, it's probably a little easier than, let's say, at Alcorn State or Mississippi Valley State. But there are qualified, certified trainers that you can, I want to use the right word, that you can contract out as independent contractors to come work your games. And most people don't know we're doing that already. But then you add on top of the amount of money that you're going to have to spend to have fall football with testing and isolation and all of that. I won't go through all of the things because we've covered it. That money now shifts to the spring to be able to free up some of the resources that you need in order to put these games on. Yes. How many SIDs do you have? Who knows how to run stats? Do you have multiple stats people? Well, we have time to train. We have time to schedule. We have time to do all of the things to put these pieces together. And that's why I said, we're not idiots. We're not going to put 8 games on one day and said, okay, spring on top of fall, on top of winter, on top of spring. We're not going to do that. We have enough wherewithal to be able to schedule. We have enough wherewithal to be able to get the requisite help that each individual institution needs. Now, does that mean we're going to have everything that we need? No, because we don't have it now. But what that does mean is we're going to be able to get the job done, and we're going to be able to do it with quality because we're synonymous with doing more with less. When you say Southwestern Athletic Conference, when you say HBCUs, what reads after that in the dictionary is doing more with less. So we know how to do that, and we will continue to do so.
Thank you.
I'm thrown off. I see you talking on the screen back behind Charles, and then it keeps coming back. I think you asking me a question, but that's just your meme in the background. So you're asking me a question now.
You're right. I'm big time. We put our shows back on the television to make sure people know that we're not playing with it. And so I know it throws me off every once in a while too. I get excited. I see myself, and I want to pat my hair like I'm in the mirror. I forget. No, you're on television. Don't do that. Stay focused. Stay focused. With that, we're going to take a quick break with the music as we get on to our live partnership with KCOH 1230 AM at the top of the hour. So if you don't mind to stay with us, we'll be right back to close out the last 15 minutes or so of this interview. And so we're going to take a quick break, about 60 seconds, and we'll be ready to get right back into the conversation as we get going, joining with the legendary Hall of Famer, Rob Cooper, bringing us on.
It's for the culture. Start your week the HBCU way. Get the latest updates from your HBCU Sports News of the Week with your host, Dr. Cavil, Mike, and Charles. On Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. Central on KCOH 1230 AM, Facebook Live, and as a podcast on streaming platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Podcast App.
Thank you with our great production engineer in the background, Roy Evans. And as we transition and continue to seriously to get better with that, Charles, as I told you, I felt the concern you have about making sure that you empower folks on your team. And so the running joke around here is I had my own promo that talked about me as the dean of HBCU sports. Everybody was excited about that. And truthfully, Professor Bishop, as we call him now, Professor Washington, they were excited for me as well. But they were wondering that they were part of this newscast as well, this podcast, this show, and why they couldn't get a promo. So Rob Calloway promised to do that, and he has been promising for a while, and he did it. And we've been trying to get it up in the air. We actually got the recording. He delivered a couple of weeks ago. And I kept promising Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, that they were having it. They's like, yeah, right. We haven't seen anything. So you were in the middle of the surprise. So just giving you some updates on what's going on.
Thank you, Dr. Cavil.
Sounds good.
With this, as we follow up and look at back into the conference, so many people are big in regards to football. As FAMU and Bethune-Cookman at this time do not have women's soccer, they do have volleyball. Based on what takes place in the MEAC, and I know this is a multi-level tier question and maybe frankly challenged to offer, but is there going to be any consideration in regards to potentially that non-conference game being set up to be able to play FAMU or Bethune-Cookman as you incorporate them into the SWAC? Or does that July 1st date prohibit that taking place in regards to looking at fall sport?
Well, FAMU and Bethune-Cookman, they are still full members of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference all the way up until the 30th of June. So they're mandated by their constitution and bylaws and what the MEAC says that they're supposed to do, and we fully respect that. So again, what we did not include any thoughts about Bethune-Cookman or FAMU, but at the same time, since they are coming, if they need a little help, they always know that we'll be here to help. So
I can appreciate that, and thanks for the frankness in that. And I want to make sure that we have an intern here. As you know, we like to develop the next lot of talent. We have intern Malik that is also doing the production, sharing the time with Roy Evans as he continues to get developed. He's a Morehouse man.
Malik.
Out of Atlanta.
Malik, make him pay you, Malik. Don't have him to call you. That's the code for free labor. Make him pay you, Malik. I went to school with Dr. Kenyatta Cavil. He made me DJ for $25 voucher. So he still hadn't paid, Malik, so don't let him get you. He's been doing it for years.
Oh, Malik is back to smiling. He likes that. He's talking about show him the money. And I noticed you said voucher, man. That's cold. You gonna still make sure he get his $25. I thought we were past that. With that, Charles, go ahead and follow up with a question.
Yeah, Dr. McClelland, I wanted to ask this question in terms of the plan that you all put out, and I wanted to ask, how important was it for the member cities or member communities within this conference that you give them some hope in terms of dealing with this pandemic, moving forward to the spring, to sort of give them incentive to wear masks or whatever that hope looks like to try to get to the spring so that we can see the fall sports?
Well, it was a significant part of what our thought process was, not just the hope of playing, but the hope of I have some definitive plan for my life. One thing this pandemic has done is just kind of put everybody on hold. So again, all 10 members institutions are going to open their doors. Some will be online, most are hybrid. So that allows student athletes to know that, hey, I am going back to school. Hey, I do have a training regimen. Hey, I do have a training table, and I have to start getting ready for these spring sports. So I think hope, is something that all of us need at this particular point in time. Me as commissioner, I need to be able to look forward to, this as well. So it was a significant piece, but it also gives you a definitive plan and definitive action that you need to take in order to get ready, because all eyes are going to be on us. All eyes are already on us with this plan, and they're going to want to see how it works. So it's time for them to get out there and show out when that time comes. So I think in this pandemic, that's the one thing that we all really have to hold on to is hope. And we really wanted to make sure that we sent a clear message that we are definitive and positive and concrete in what we're going to do, and we have a plan, and we're going to work towards it.
Yes. With that, I want to follow up and let Mike ask a follow-up question, but do have an update. This is Dr. Kenyatta Cavil with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop on Inside the HBCU Sports Lab show. We're interviewing Dr. Charles McClelland, Commissioner of the SWAC, as we are live on the radio streams at 1230 KQH AM radio. with that, Malik is getting paid. Just want to make sure we put that out.
Yeah, couple of tweets talking about pay the intern. Dr. McClelland, say what you started.
I want to make sure. We're going to try to make sure we do pay the young people. They deserve it. They're working hard. We're going to try to put something in there. We're going to do a little more than the voucher system that we were using when we were in college. The problem you have now really doesn't work with these young people. They're a lot smarter than you. You can't negotiate with vouchers anymore. With that, let me let Mike ask a follow-up question, and I'll do one, and we'll come to a close and let you have the final word, Charles.
Yeah, Dr. McClelland, one thing I wanted to, when we first heard this, there was, let me just say, some misinformation that was out on Friday. And for those of us who follow this, were kind of upset, as I know that you and your team were, and it almost becomes kind of a mini communication crisis. And I heard you talk earlier saying, there are things that are impacted by this misinformation. But can you take us through, once you and your team heard this miscommunication, what adjustments, other than, I'm not going to say it, other than like, gosh darn, and I'm being nice, what is this guy, what are these folks thinking? Because there's a certain degree of unprofessionalism that goes with this. And I'm not going to say the source's name, but I will be respectful and say that, they thought had some information. It could be misleading. You have a lot of things at play. So take us through the readjustments that you and your team made at the time when you saw the announcement, keeping in mind that no decision had been made.
Mike, such a professional way to ask such a messy question. But
I'm trying, man.
Yeah, let's get into it. I like the way all of the professional terms that you use, misinformation and all of that. We have a leak within the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and unfortunately, whoever is leaking information is leaking bad and false information. What was leaked on Friday was that the Southwestern Athletic Conference was going to cancel sports on Monday. And that was totally incorrect. And you start talking about the process. I was actually doing an interview about another subject, and it came across the wire. And as I'm on a real-time interview, the person asked me that question. Well, hey, we just reported that you're going to cancel sports. And I had to take a pause. And I was like, well, who is this guy? And so they told me who the guy was. Well, first of all, that's 100% inaccurate and premature. Our council of presidents have not made a decision. I don't know what their decision would be, although I cannot tell you that that would not be their ultimate decision. We have a process, we have a plan, and we're going to follow that plan. I think the unprofessionalism and this rush to be first, I don't think that they really understand that they could potentially be affecting people's livelihood. And for our standpoint, that is exactly what we were trying to protect. The reason why I was so adamant and defiant about correcting the record, there was two reasons. One, it was inaccurate information. I give everybody that's listening, if somebody reports something and it's true and it's a leak, you're not going to hear anything from me, right? I'm going to go quiet. If they report inaccurate information, I'm going to come out and say it's inaccurate. So Kenyatta put something out, and he leaks this story and say SWAC is going to do something next week and you don't hear from it, it's probably true. I'm not going to come out and defiantly, say that it's not true. The second piece of that is I have 10 CEOs of 10-member institutions that theoretically have been violated. Their trust had been violated. Their word had been violated. My word had been violated. The integrity of the Southwestern Athletic Conference has been violated. And it was just that serious. So whomever they got that information from, and I tell you this, and for everybody that's listening, we have an investigation unit on it, and we're close. We're going to find, we know how to squeeze the leaker out, and we're close.
Got to find the mole.
And one thing I can tell you, the guy that got his information got it from somebody else. They got it from somebody that's internal to the Southwestern Athletic Conference. So we're getting close. And the only thing that I would say is, if you're going to leak something, please leak accurate information, because it creates such an issue for individuals just for the story of I said it first that the SWAC was going to make a decision. Everybody knew that we were meeting on Monday and was going to make a decision. So Okay. I appreciate the question, and I was joking up front, but I'm glad you asked the question because this is a serious matter in which they just haphazardly threw a tweet out and went on about their business. And I did see that they haphazardly threw another tweet out when we announced to try to tell us, I was right. But yeah, you were right today, but you were wrong on Friday. And your credibility should be called in question if you haphazardly throw a tweet out without confirming your sources.
Absolutely. Thank you for the candor. My first response was to Doc and to Dr. Bishop. I was like, who is this guy? So that was like,
that was everybody's first response.
And I will say this for Mike. That is exactly what he said in the text. Who is this guy? I'll leave it at that. Go watch what I said this morning on Brian and AD show, where I really go in and really give my candor in regards to what I thought on it. Go check out BCSN in regards to my comments about that, and it was very serious in the manner that you talk about. That there's a way that you handle your professionalism, there's a way that you take your profession, and there's a way that you handle business. And their words matter in this context. And I tell my students, and as you said, you've been a guest lecturer within our BS in Sport Management program at Texas Southern University. But we got to talk to you about what needs to be in a program for people to get into the business of sport, particularly if they have the interest at the intercollegiate level. And you taught a class. And one of the things that we talked in designing that is that colleagues matter, words matter, your integrity matters. And so I just wanted to bring that to the table. Follow-up question, a little bit more back into the framing about this. A lot of people are having discussions, and I know this was something that tugged at you when you were the VP of athletics at Texas Southern University, and a little bit before that, even as an AD at Prairie View, in regards to paraphernalia and license. A lot of our fans are concerned that there's not an easy way to get merchandise out there. I most recently seen that SWAC has even made sure that people that wanted masks that had the SWAC logo on there is out there on the marketplace. I thought that was commendable. But even more so in that, does the conference have any way to help member institutions? Because I know this is a two-way street. Some of this is paraphernalia and from a institutional perspective, let me say. And then obviously some of it is from a conference perspective in terms of how you do licensing on that paraphernalia and insignias and logos and things of that nature. What is the role that SWAC can play in further developing the efforts to make that stronger for individuals to be able to get that?
Yeah, well, each member institution has their own licensing program. So when you go to the various areas, it's really the relationship that the institution has with the local market. So if you go to Baton Rouge, for example, you see a lot of Southern University paraphernalia. If you go to Ruston, Louisiana, you see a lot of Grambling paraphernalia. Houston is a tough sell, Dr. Cavil. There's so much entertainment value that's in Houston, and it's spread so thin. I think if you go to the HEB on 4290, you can now get some Prairie View paraphernalia, but that's almost about it. So the local market is driven by the institution and the institutional licensing office. I think from a conference standpoint, what we have to do is to continue to build the brand of the conference and those 10 member institutions. That is by getting on TV, having the Celebration Bowl, and also creating an environment where people know who Prairie View is, who knows Texas Southern University, and making those an iconic brand to where that now can be something that people want. One of the ideas I had, and I'm still working with Nike on this, I haven't necessarily gotten that far, is let's bring a Southwestern Athletic Conference HBCU line and put Nike on it, right? Let's get a SWAC brand. Let's go back to the old HBCU brand that we had and put some old throwback jerseys. Let's put a Jerry Rice jersey out there, a Michael Strahan jersey, and put Nike on it and SWAC on it and sell that at a national level that will in turn bring some notoriety and some recognition on a local level. That's part of our strategic plan. It hasn't come up yet, but we are definitely having some preliminary talks with Nike and doing some of those things. We have a board member named James Whitner. If you know anything about James, he's tied into Michael Jordan, and he does a lot of Jordan signature shoes. We've been talking to James theoretically about the idea of doing some signature things for the Southwestern Athletic Conference. So we've had some preliminary conversation, but we've gotten sidetracked over the last 6 to 8 months with the pandemic.
just a little.
You had that pandemic entanglement.
Right. Get back on it.
That's pretty good there, Mike. Dr. Charles McClelland, Commissioner of the Southwestern Athletic Conference, on interview with Dr. Cavil's inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. As we come close to this interview, thank you for your time. We know it's valuable, and we want to be respectful for that. So with this, we'll let you close with any additional information or statements that you would like to get out to the listeners at this time.
Well, I just want to thank SWAC Nation, including our new member institutions that will be joining us in 2021, for all of the support. We've said it, and it's not just a mantra, and I think our actions have proven that the health and safety and well-being of our student athletes has been and will always be our #1 priority. We're excited about the future within the Southwestern Athletic Conference. We're excited about the unlimited possibilities that we have for future growth. And I think as SWAC Nation, you should be equally excited, because there are a lot of great things that have happened, and there are a lot of great things to come. So just like to thank you three for having me on the show. Continue doing what you're doing, and I will be with you 110% each and every time. So just let me know what I can do to help.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate that. With that, that was Dr. Charles McClelland interviewing with Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop on BCSN. We thank you for your time, Charles, and know you have a busy schedule with more interviews. We'll look forward to talking with you soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc.
Thank you. Thanks, Charles.
As we are climbing into our next segment, I do want to remind people that I talked a little bit about an interview that I got to join with Brian and AD. Just wanted to give you a little update of where you could go get that information. You can go to www.facebook.com/mybcsn1. Again, that's mybcsn1 to see the interview that we were a part of that is up. We taped it and put it up, footage live. It's nice little interview, great information in regards to what was going on with the SWAC and my thoughts in regards to how this played out, as well as Brian and AD asking some very candid questions in line with that. So I really encourage you all to get out there and in any way as possible, check out that interview, as well as Trevin Jones joined us. Again, for folks that are talking, we're working on something big. HBCU Pro Sports Media Association. It's going to be a collaborative effort of all the HBCU pro black media out there, both HBCU coverage and those that cover professionals that extend the HBCU brand out there. We're looking at coming together collectively, empowerment. We know what's going on in this society in regards to that. We think this is a better way to deliver the HBCU sports news to you. So we're hard at work of trying to asphyxiate that from a association platform. So look for that coming in the near future. We're literally working on that as you speak. You've seen cross tabulations of many of the people that are involved with this, that are essentially the founding members of this organization, if you want to call it that, and we're going to ratify all that. It will be open for everybody. For those that have not been contacted, we spread the net wide, and we tried to ask as many people as possible that are covering HBCU sports to be a part of that. Some people answered the call immediately, some didn't. Somehow we may have missed some people here and there, but have no doubt that this will be inclusive for everybody in terms of gender representation and all that. So look for that information to come in terms of HBCU Pro Sports Media. And you can hashtag it because it's coming in the near future. So just wanted to give you a little notification of that. with that, gentlemen, as we get into the second part of the show, if you would, and kind of discuss of what's taking place. First, let me get your thoughts, Charles, on the interview with Dr. Charles McClelland, and specifically in regards to what has taken place in a lot of ways since Friday, really, when this kind of germinated. You can even take it back a little further with the announcement of the MEAC in terms of what took place, essentially 4 of the 5 HBCU conferences. And I want to be as inclusive as possible. You know, we make sure that we include the NAIA programs out here. I've been the first one to talk about the first program in terms of an HBCU to decide the Council for Fall Sports. In my estimation, and everywhere I can see in the research, was Houston-Tennessee University. Mike, you've talked about that. I've talked about that right here in Texas, Austin, Texas. And that was essentially behind the heels of what took place in late spring when a Division II California conference canceled their sports way back then. But in terms of this summer, that first announcement was right there. So I want to make sure that we give love to the Gulf Coast Athletic Conference. And we'll be reaching out to Dr. Kiki Baker-Barnes, the interim commissioner there, to see how the members of the Gulf Coast Athletic Conference, that happens to be all HBCU institutions, how are they trying to move forward? The members of that conference are mostly private institutions, so we believe that they should have a framework too. And then obviously that includes those HBCUs outside of that league. A lot of them are in the Red River Athletic Conference at the NAIA level. And we've heard that the Red River Athletic Conference has moved their fall sports and canceled it and moved it to the spring from an NAIA's perspective. Obviously, we were here for the announcement of Langston University when they moved and canceled fall sports as part of the Sooner Athletic Conference outside of that. And so just talking about that, you heard the announcement today with Texas College. You heard the announcement of Wiley College in terms of what they're doing. And then obviously you step out of that before SIAC made a move, and AD had a platform that talked a little bit about what the SIAC was going through to make their move. So a lot of information out there. Last thing I'd get on the record is the AU Center, Morehouse, Clark Atlanta University, Spelman, obviously the med school and the theology school have announced earlier, just most recently, that all their classes will be online. So there's some other institutions that are rapidly moving forward with that designation. With that said, again, Charles, with all that stuff in the background, what were your thoughts on the interview and ultimately SWAC making the decision to postpone fall sports and ultimately moving or seeking to move them to the spring 2021?
Well, I think first and foremost, I will say this: it was the right decision in terms of postponing the conference season. One of the things that jumped out for me is I talked to a lot of fans when the announcement came out, and that was the reason why I kind of asked the question to Dr. McClelland. Was, in essence, it did give a lot of fans hope, at least that they will see their teams in the spring if we do what we need to do to try to curb the numbers. Because just right now, I think we've texted each other quite a bit in terms of I just don't see how, in terms of just looking at the trajectory of the infections. And the thing that at least jumps out for me is it did infuse quite a bit of hope for people to take this more serious, to indeed mask up, if you will. And I saw quite a few hashtags that popped up in terms of mask up. So I think that was the plan itself gave a tremendous amount of fans of their respective schools just, okay, let's try to get through the fall, and hopefully we get an opportunity to see our favorite teams in the spring in terms of taking it more serious, in terms of doing the things that we need to do to try to curb this pandemic a little bit.
Certainly. I appreciate you sharing that perspective. And Mike, I want to give you the chance. Same question, if you would. What is your framing on the interview with Dr. Charles McClelland, Commissioner of the SWAC, as you know? And in conjunction with that, what kind of led up to this and all the backdrop that you alluded to in your question? What is your overall thoughts of that?
Three words kind of stand out to me: leadership, strategy, planning. Taking the leadership. Although, to be honest, the human side of me, I'm a little bit surprised that this wasn't a joint SWAC MEAC thing for a number of reasons. If you look at what the CIAA, the SIAC did, but he said it. Those conferences have to do what's best for them. But taking the leadership, if you look at all of the other conferences, you got to know that the SWAC is having a number of calls each day with the presidents, with the ADs, going through scenarios. I do this in the corporate world. So when he said that he had 4 to 5 calls a day on this very issue, I could certainly feel his pain and your COVID-19 out. So, but to hear not only about the decision and the thought process, that there is a plan already in place for the spring, that became very evident to me. They just didn't go into this, and they're considering safety. The leadership league is they're stepping out and saying the safety of our student athletes is paramount. That's most important. We've gone through all of the scenarios. We've looked at all of the risks. We've looked at protocols required. We've looked at all of the other conferences. If you hear his tone, you hear the planning, strategy, and leadership coming to the forefront. And he's saying, let's put a plug in it. Let's postpone it. Here's what the plan is, at least initially, with the understanding that they're going to have to make some slight tweaks and adjustments, but there's a plan in place already for spring. And to me, I mean, if you weren't a SWAC fan now, after hearing this, you should be now at the leadership, not only in Dr. McClelland, but the whole leadership team, at all of the precautions that were taken, and the thought process. And Dr. Cavil, CB, that's just not enough time to go into probably all of the factors they may have considered. But I mean, but just to go ahead and say, hey, we had this timeline. We considered this. We said this was our timeline. End of July. We're going to make the call now. Let's postpone it. Here's the plan going out. So many conferences has not. The Big Five have said, we're going to get the money out of these boys regardless. We're going to come up with some way. And here is a conference, a Division I conference saying, we're going to step out and take the leadership and say, hey, the safety of our student athletes is paramount. And I appreciate that. That's my takeaway.
Yeah, with that, I want to follow up with that, and I'm going to go right back to you, Charles, because I know you have some follow-up comments with that. But I want to touch on this a little bit, because we joke in here, and we take this, extremely seriously. And I think our fans have talked about the way they respect the show because they can see that we take it extremely seriously. But I don't think people resonate with what you just said, Mike, and this is why. People don't necessarily know your background. They know you from the data, analytics, and statistics that you bring on this table. They understand how you talk about this from a business perspective in a lot of ways. But people may not understand that you are literally a highly trained professional. a degree in chemical engineering, from Prairie View A&M University. Yes, I'm going to tag that on there. An executive MBA from Texas Southern University. Went to law school, taking law classes. And you were shifted over not just in chemical, but in environmental engineering, environmental toxicology. And one of your responsibilities is analyzing analytics for precautionary necessaries in a highly influential area, where if these things are not done right, that you are causing massive catastrophic events. And so when you talk about leadership planning and more, you're not just talking about this theoretically on some stuff that you study and read from a book. This is from you being at the height of your profession as an executive level person, dealing with this on a day-to-day issue. In a lot of ways, Charles does this too at a very high level. And a lot of our fans are at the highest level in their professions. I mean, they are executive managers and VPs. And for those that are not, they're on their way. So we do not just discuss these things from a trivial matter. right? And so I would be remiss if I did not pull that to the table in regards to when we talk about things, we take that same subject matter expert that we've trained in our other field and we bring it over to this field. And so I wanted to put that on the table so people understand it. I think most of the people do understand it, and I applaud them for that. But sometimes you make that clear for folks that just happen, that they may not know that. And so if that sounded like I was going on a diatribe, I apologize for those out there that saw it that way, but I thought it was necessary to get that on the table. And I know, Charles, you wanted to jump in here and say something, and then we'll move on to some other things, talking about it specifically about the business of how we move forward. But I thought it was important that I got the contextual site of what you all thought took place with the conference, Southwestern Athletic Conference, and therefore all the other conferences out there that you all really brought to the table in a lot of ways, and talked about the importance of them in many facets leading the way, which HBCUs don't necessarily get the due credit they deserve in doing that.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wanted to share that context, if you would allow me. Go ahead, Charles, follow up.
And that was a point that I really wanted to hone in on in terms of leading the way and looking at the whole uniqueness of attempting to play the fall sports in the spring. I know it's something conceptually we've talked about, but to see a plan in place, I think that was one of the first things I texted you, like, wow, the plan moving forward. And you have an opportunity, if we can get there, if we can get beyond where this pandemic might be in 2021, if we can get there, we can do the things necessary to get there, the SWAC could have an opportunity to be playing football without the NFL hovering over their shoulder, without the Power 5 FBS teams hovering over their shoulder. They have a unique opportunity to be front and center stage. So, and that's, again, goes into the kind of the hope, at least, to do the things necessary throughout the rest of the year to stay safe, to mask up, to socially distance, do the CDC guidelines, so that we hopefully can get to a point to where we can see our favorite teams.
Absolutely.
No doubt about it. Well said. And I think thank you, for sharing that in that disposition. I wanted to give a shout out to Kimberly Reynolds, who is the president of Prairie View A&M University National Alumni Association. She's joined us. She's doing tremendous work, partnering not just with Prairie View University in terms of the alumni side, pushing that narrative, the importance of supporting Prairie View or supporting your HBCU. Obviously, we had an interview with the National Alumni Association that happens to be a brother of ours, Florida A&M University. We certainly have platforms for all the HBCU National Alumni Presidents over the years. We talked about them, and wanted to give a shout out for G. Boom Holly that is doing a lot of work for us behind the scenes. Wanted to thank him. He's jumped on here watching us. He'd be remiss if I didn't come in here and tell y'all again to make sure you go and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dr. Ville's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. We certainly want to continue to push that forward and get that information out there. You can follow us directly on Twitter now at Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on Twitter and those platforms. So look for us to continue to springboard this. We've partnered with a lot of people out there have come on board, want to be a part of this, and we're open. This is an exclusive experience. If you have some partnership that you wanted to bring to the table that you can do, we're working with Cicely Parson, who is connected with Grambling University, a proud alumni, who is doing a lot of work behind the scenes in terms of our scripts and our questions. And she's come into the fold. And so just want to say thank you for all these people, Roy Evans, Malik, the work that he's doing. And so continue. I want you to understand that this is becoming a production in regards to what we're doing to produce HBCU content unlike anyone else. And the fact that we're taking it so serious is not something that we can do alone. This is part of a team. And the way that you can be on part of this team is to Make sure you follow us. Make sure you like us. Make sure you share this information as many platforms. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Again, as we said, like us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. For me, that's Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, DrKenyatta Again, that's DrKenyatta on Facebook, Instagram. You can follow me in terms of YouTube and Twitter. That's Dr. Ville inside the HBCU Sports Lab. And that support is huge. It makes it financially able for us to do that. So for those that can't directly help us financially, which we would love, but being able to get our numbers up helps us as well as we shop the marketplace and making sure that we can provide you great content and provide it to you in a very clear and concise and professional manner. So I'd be remiss if I didn't share that. Let's move on as we continue to look at the business side of what's taking place here. Big announcement took place this week with Jackson State and FAMU to battle in 2021 in the Orange Blossom Classic.
Yes.
It's set for Labor Day weekend. I'm going to go to Charles first, obviously, with Jackson State being connected with that. And the fact that you had an interview with VP of Athletics, Ashley Robinson. I'm sure some of that information came up so people can go take a deeper dive and follow you on that interview and hear what took place there. But if you would share a little bit about the context. This is at the Hard Rock Stadium, if you would. It is my understanding that this will be a conference matchup. So it'll be one of the conference matchups to kick off the season as FAMU becomes in the fold. I think that is so fascinating to see this, which means more than likely that will be a divisional matchup. There is some question whether Jackson State could be one of the teams that goes to the Western Division. But if they stay in the East, it's obvious that FAMU and Bethune-Cookman will be in the East. So if Jackson happens to stay in the East, not only is it a conference matchup, but this game will be similar in a lot of ways to the Labor Day Classic.
Labor Day Classic,
with
right.
Texas Southern and Prairie View kicking off the season with a divisional game on the line, which makes it fascinating in a way. JSU leads the series 10-7-2 and has won the previous two games of the series that just took place the last 2 years. The last one in Tallahassee. Both Games came down to the wires. Heartbreaking. We have Roy in the background saying that he's ready to strike again because it didn't work out the way that they wanted. So some blood are boiling in a lot of ways. The team last met in 2018 with Jackson State clipping the Rattlers in a 18-16 win in Tallahassee, which is fascinating in a lot of ways. Charles, what are your thoughts on this game, matchup, everything? You know, you bring it to the table.
Sure. I mean, there's tremendous excitement within the Jackson State fan base in terms of starting the season off in Miami, playing Florida A&M. And I know a lot of people talk about Florida A&M Southern matchup, but this Jackson State Florida A&M matchup is one that has taken on even more significance. And to start off the season, Orange Blossom Classic against Florida A&M, everybody's really looking forward to it. And I tell you what, I had the great opportunity to talk to the 1962 MVP of the Orange Blossom Classic, Roy Curry, and I'm sure he's just as excited about getting an opportunity to see this Florida A&M Rattler team again. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think a lot of us just really looking forward to getting to 2021 and hopefully seeing this game take place. It's going to be an exciting one, and I know Roy is very familiar. We've had our way with the Rattlers over the past 2 games there.
Here we go.
They come down. They come
Here
down
we go.
to, the final wire, if you will. So looking forward to seeing Coach Willie Shotgun Simmons again. Hi, Coach.
Shots fired. Shots fired.
That's how you deliver the news a little bit. You put some shots fired on it. Mike, contextually, outside of it, as I kind of alluded, that this could be a divisional matchup. And you're obviously very familiar with how this works on the West Division with the Labor Day Classic in terms of Texas Southern University and Prairie View. What are your thoughts about this Labor Day weekend game with FAMU and Jackson State to kick off things with FAMU and Bethune-Cookman being full members of the Southwestern Athletic Conference?
I think there's some similarities, but there's some interesting contrasts. Number one, you're really kicking off the first season where FAMU's a full-fledged member.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so that's one factor. Number two, it's Jackson State, and FAMU. It's the Marching 100 against, what's y'all band name?
I know you didn't do that. I know you didn't know what the band name was. I know you know it's the Sunny Boom of the South.
I'm kidding. So I did it, Roy. I got that one. Roy asked me to do that for him.
I see you, Roy.
So, but anyway, so you have hype, you have Miami, and now you have the Battle of the Bands. You're going to prop and market that. It brings a higher draw, dare I say, than the Prairie View TSU game. Although, you're going to have this COVID factor, then you'll have a spring season, and then you start fresh. And I think to be honest, all of the Labor Day Classics may have some degree of, higher, thrust in their appeal, at least initially, because, we survived COVID. Yes, we had a modified season in the spring, but now we're starting out. Now we got FAMU. Now we got Bethune in the season. And then this means a lot, not only from a historical perspective, but from a monetary and from a fan perspective. You have the opportunity to draw not only hardcore fans, but the novice fans as well to Miami. And I've always said that. I always talk to Dr. Bill. Now you can draw the novice fans, those folks who are corporate folks who wear the FAMU Rattler on the chest to work, to the corporate meetings, but now they want to go to Miami. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in this game as well to really kickstart this new SWAC off.
And Dr. Cavil, you saw firsthand last year, SWAC MEAC Challenge, Jackson State fan base, and we getting RVs, baby. We'll be there.
Oh yeah.
Y'all are y'all gonna tailgate in Miami?
Why not?
Yeah. Don't be surprised. They'll go to Miami and then they'll take 2 or 3 more days and find a way. They'll be over there in the Bahamas. So you gotta watch out for that. I might catch them over there. Just to let you know. I know. I'll come out of Houston and be like, no problem. I'll catch you on the back end. When y'all go to Bahamas, I'll be there. Talking about, hey Charles, how's it going?
bring barbecue pits, golf clubs, whatever.
That's right.
We'll travel. Want to give a shout out before we transition to the next segment and get into some more talk. I want to give a shout out to some other folks that come on board and are checking us out. John Cobb, Christian Williams, Michael Road Dog Reed jumping in here, Charlotte McGinnis, cracking up. Mike, come on, Mike. Wendy Jenkins.
Shout out to my sister. Just come back from Germany. Shout out to my sister.
No doubt about it. Chuck Hunt says all these great minds are expressing themselves laughing loud. Yeah, we're going to get it all in there. Legendary Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper is putting us, getting us done in the background, making sure that all things work. So just wanted to make sure we gave a little love for that. Dr. Keno Miller, a professor of Florida A&M University, alumni of the university, FAMU University, did his doctorate at Indiana University, just sitting out here giving me a text on some things, getting it together. So wanted to talk about that. I wanted to shift a little bit and look at what were your thoughts in terms of Carolina Panthers. The executive of the Carolina Panthers, David and his wife, Nicole Tepper, provided $250,000 to students at Johnson C. Smith University. Funds will be used to support students who are experiencing financial difficulty caused by COVID-19 pandemic. The funds will benefit as many as 70 returning students who demonstrate need in that area. What are your thoughts in terms of that, Mike?
I thought it was a good effort to reach out to Johnson C. Smith. I think it'll mean a lot for the community. I see nothing wrong with it at all. I wish a lot more professional teams would reach out to HBCUs, no matter what the amount. So to me, I think it was good, and I hope it spurs out more NFL programs reaching out to HBCUs. God knows we have pro NFL teams that are definitely in close proximity to HBCUs. So I hope it spurs a lot more. That is my hope from this. But I definitely applaud the Carolina Panther organization for it.
I think there's significant and great points you make there in terms of not only congratulating the Carolina Panthers in regards to doing that, but the potential about other institutions getting onto that. Also, you had the Black College Hall of Fame ceremony last week, Charles. I know you got a chance to see a little bit that took place that provided a historical framework in terms of the Black College Hall of Fame and its connection to the NFL. I thought that was done in a really good job, led by Doug Williams, Shaq Harris, the founders of that, and among the other HBCU individual Hall of Famers and Black College Hall of Famers that got on there and talked about that. They talked about the partnership with the professional Pro Football Hall of Fame and how that looked in conjunction of them starting in Atlanta with the College Hall of Fame, and the fact that they have the banquet there. Obviously, we heard the news with the cancellation this year's game, which was going to be between Central State University and Howard University, but next year it's between Grambling State and Tennessee State, which is a nice way similar to what we talked about with FAMU and Jackson State, although that won't be a conference game, obviously, with Tennessee State not being a member of the SWAC, but two legendary programs. So what were your thoughts on how that production of that last week?
Yeah.
The generalities of that and how they put all of it in context. What were your thoughts on that last week?
A tremendous job. Very well done in terms of providing that historical backdrop in terms of the partnership, if you will, and the history of HBCU players and the impact that they've made on the NFL. And no doubt about it, we can open our own wing of HBCU players in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So I really enjoy the production part of it in terms of the individual players talking about their experience playing for their respective schools and how that experience propelled them in the NFL to have a tremendous career. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. Very well done.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Last year I got to go before pre-COVID, obviously, literally right before COVID because it's held in February. I got a chance to go to the Black College Football Hall of Fame. Flew up there. Dr. Charles McClelland was gracious enough to allow me to sit at his table as he brought a whole table for the event. Got a chance to meet in person the CIAA Commissioner, Jackie Williams, in regards to McWilliams in terms of her sitting at the table as well. It was really fascinating to be in the mix of that. You've heard about one of the things I think a lot of people you might want to put on your bucket list in terms of that. So just wanted to shout that out a little bit that I was there this year. And so when I saw that video, it was a heck of a production. A lot of pride was beaming in terms of what took place there in that. And it was a fundraising component of it. And this helmet was auctioned off in terms of a fundraising part of that. And so I know Mike may have to dip out of here a little early of a prior engagement. So wanted to make sure we give him a last word or two as it starts to come up. And he's going to have to transition because we're still going to do our top of the hour as we bring in Rob Calloway with the HBCU report. Let me get that out. But before I go to Mike Washington, I want to give some love to Dr. Jason Cavil. He's one of the people in the SWAC office that is behind the scenes.
Yeah.
He does a lot of the groundwork when you hear Dr. Charles McClelland talking about the schedule that took place. One of the individuals that goes and does the research to see what different platforms are out there for scheduling. And he does this for all the sports, but obviously we're focusing in this case for football. He's doing some tremendous work in regards to the expansion side of this. What will the conference divisionals look like? What will the schedule components look like? Putting several different options on the table for the coaches to discuss, to see what they think about it, to see what the AD's VP of athletics, what they think about it, what the senior women administrators do with this in terms of the various sports across the landscape. Football and basketball is the one that I've had a pleasure to kind of talk with him and negotiate this space and see how he does all his work, thinking about stretching the schedule out to what it means to maybe paying 20 games or some options that Dr. Charles McClelland has talked about. The individual that does that work in the background is none other than Dr. Jason Cavil. So I'm thankful that he's decided to take out his time to join us and see, what we're delivering on here. Big fan of the work that he's doing. And I know I need to be careful with this because he's happy where he is and I don't want to get him in trouble. But as we talked about, no, I'm serious about it. Do you understand once I say this, Charles? Check this out. Not to displace any of the VPs of athletics out there, but he's an up and coming rising. One of the things that we're talking about is looking at those assistant coaches that will at some point becoming head coaches in all the sports. That also needs to be done at the athletic director side.
Right.
We have some major talent out there that assistant athletic director. And so, yes, we'd love to keep them in the SWAC, but these are people that would be great in any conference out there. So people need to understand what these people are in position to do and what they're doing. So I just want to say, hey, keep your eyes out on Dr. Jason Cavil because he's on
very much so.
In regards to that. So, that's the kind of work that we talk about doing here is making sure that people understand the deep dive into athletics, the business side. We get to talk to the front level people and they do the work and we make sure that they get their voices out there, but we take a deeper dive and make sure people know those behind the scenes. With that, I want to take a little more deep dive in terms of Roger Kadar. We touched on this a little bit last week, but let's go back into that. And before you have to get out of here, or if you're making that move, let me know. Mike, I know that you know a little bit about baseball, but former Southern baseball coach selected by the ABC Hall of Famer, Roger Kadar, has been selected, as you know, in terms of the American Baseball Coaches Association, 14 SWAC championships, 2 Black College National Championships, 13 SWAC Coach of the Year awards, 11 NCAA appearances, 2 NCAA playoff appearances, several NCAA playoff victories. Just got squeezed out to getting a chance to make it into that super regional affair. We haven't seen many HBCUs do that. Jackson State made a run at it a couple of years ago. Prairie View was wide on the heels a couple of years as they pushed the envelope. Texas Southern was right there at one time. Michael Robinson doing a lot of their work, just to name some other ones. But this is all about Roger Kadar right now. The 2021 ABCA Hall of Fame induction ceremony will be held during the 77th Annual ABCA Convention, January 8th, 2021, at the Gaylord Nash in Washington, D.C. Tickets to attend the Hall of Fame banquet will go on sale September 1st. Congratulations to Roger Kadar being selected by the ABCA Hall of Fame. Last statement for you, Mike, because I know you are a baseball fan at heart in a lot of ways, as your son played baseball as they crossed over lacrosse and still playing a little bit, as unfortunately in this environment, they almost had to make a choice on that. What are your thoughts about this big news? I know you touched on it last week. Any final statements you want to make?
Wow, 900 wins. So, I mean, this man's legacy, 33 seasons, was it 12, 13, 14 SWAC champion? I'm going off the top of my head, but this is a legend. So well-deserved, hats off. I think he took a team and they upset, what was it, CP, a Cal State Fullerton team that was highly ranked.
Southern Mississippi team had them on their heel.
He had a lot of upsets in the regional finals. And if you know baseball, he was a stalwart. He knew how to develop and build teams. So hats off. Congratulations. To me personally, I think it's long overdue. So, but hats off to Roger Kadar. Yeah,
very much so.
Definitely tip my cap.
Definitely.
With my COVID-19 haircut I tip my.
I love it, Mike. I know you have to get out of here, so we'll let you do that. Go ahead, say your final statement.
Yeah, I apologize. Thank you again. Hats off, really going back to the SWAC team. I can't talk enough about Dr. McClelland and his team. And the work they've done, the work that goes behind that, crisis management, emergency management, strategic planning, day-to-day decision-making. I mean, that's tech. There's corporate people who can't do that. And so hats off to them, but hats off to Kadar. Now my son's freshman virtual orientation, so I'm sorry I have to dip off. So
No, we proud of you. Tell Bryce, you know how much.
Congratulations, Bryce.
So we want to say congratulations to Bryce, and we're proud of him. Keep doing what he's doing. You know, Godfather and all. You know, I'm proud of Bryce, and so certainly do what you got to do.
All right, fellas.
Yep. With that, Charles, add into that when you talk about the legend, Coach Cato.
I mean, you talking about Coach Cato, we're talking about an icon in SWAC baseball. We talk constantly about the football legends, but you talk about icons like Coach Cato, Coach Bob Brady at Jackson State, who's also a Hall of Famer, Rat McGowan, Wilbert Ellis. I mean, you can just keep going on, and they might not, you know, for a lot of people have the stature of the Eddie Robinson, but they are icons in HBCU baseball. So hats off again to Coach Cato. I know I spent many a weekend watching those Southern teams come to Jackson. I spent weekends going down to Baton Rouge. You know how I am. I have to get that W against Southern some type way. And I tell you what, those are always just tremendous baseball games, strategic baseball games, edge of your seat baseball games. To see Coach Brady and Coach Cato lock up, meeting of the minds, that was just fun. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time watching those Jackson State and Southern games. I tell you what, Coach Cato, he got the best of us quite a few times in a way that I hadn't seen other teams in the SWAC get the best of Coach Brady.
Yeah, because at the time, we enjoy SWAC differently now. I mean, baseball in the SWAC has always been significant. But at one time, it was essentially three teams. It was Jackson State, Southern, and Grambling. And you can see that in terms of teams that have won championships. I'd say essentially the three teams. Not that other folks were not playing solid baseball, but in terms of measurement of programs, in terms of championships, you've seen that with Jackson State in so many different ways. That is just amazing to me. Now we enjoy it with multiple teams, with Prairie View, the history of how they rebuilt that program, Texas Southern University. Now you're bringing in solid programs, championship level programs, Bethune-Cookman, FAMU, Alabama State has stepped up. Alcorn State got in there and got things going in a lot of ways. You got Arkansas Pine Bluff pushing the envelope as well as Alabama A&M in some ways. But think about this. He produced several Major League Baseball talents, several of them that played at that level. But in college, he produced Golden Spikes Award winner for the best amateur baseball player in the United States,
Precisely.
Ricky Weeks, in 2003, that had a long Major League career now.
Right.
The Milwaukee Brewers, to let you know how talented he was. Obviously, he's part of the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame in a lot of ways, SWAC Hall of Fame. Just enamored with baseball in so many ways. But the fact that he produced the Golden Spikes Award winner, give me some thoughts on that as well.
Well, you're talking about the best collegiate baseball player in the country. The best collegiate baseball player in the country is playing in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. And that goes a long way. And I remember watching Ricky Weeks during that time. He was a Southern, and he was the best baseball player beyond a shadow of a doubt. I tell you what,
batted over 400. Oh my goodness, man! You talking about somebody broke your heart? I was like, why y'all just don't walk him?
Yeah, I'm standing up. 4 pitches out wide. Let's I don't care if you walk a run in. Just don't pitch to him.
And because it's gonna be 4 runs, 3 runs.
Yeah. So it was really fun to watch those Southern teams during that time, especially watching Ricky Weeks up close and personal before he endeavored on to the major leagues. You knew he was going to be something to reckon with once he got to the majors.
Yeah. Can you think about SWAC baseball now? Ooh, it's going to be.
Oh, man. That part I'm so looking forward to. FAMU, Bethune-Cookman, Alabama State, Jackson State, and we ain't even moved to the West yet. Southern, Texas Southern. Those are going to be some fun SWAC baseball tournaments.
Oh, no doubt about it. That's going to be just wild when you talk about what's taking place there in so many different ways. When we just look at what is taking place in the landscape, in a lot of ways, what's going on as we start to get to the top of this hour, how are you looking at the rest of the fall. And what are your thoughts in terms of men's and women's basketball in the winter sports? It's not up next, and quietly people have not delved deeply into that. Rightfully so, because we're looking at the fall sports, football, cross country, women's soccer, women's volleyball. But the next up, and basketball is unique because it's called the winter sports because it doesn't start at the very part of the fall, but it falls in a lot of ways. At least many of the non-conference games falls in terms of what we call the fall part of the year. November and December. Conference games don't start until January. We've seen this at the Division II level when they canceled fall. A lot of it was indicative at the Division II level that they pushed probably with basketball starting in January with just conference games. Some way that was legislated with the NCAA Division II from the standpoint that they reduced the number of total games you would play at the Division II level. I think they reduced it by 5 or 6 games in totality. And so that takes place. What do you see taking place at the division level in basketball, as a lot of people are now starting to kind of question that? What are just your general thoughts on whether basketball will ultimately become a casualty because of the trajectory of what we're seeing with COVID-19 at this point? Obviously, we know it will change, but if you had your crystal ball, in a lot of ways, what are you seeing taking place with that?
Well, that's a very unique situation when talking about basketball because, like you said, the first thing that kind of jumped out for me are those revenue games that they play in November, December before you start conference play. You know, how will my basketball team look coming into January and February without those 12 to 15 games that kind of season them up? And I would like to think that those teams in some manner, will be up to speed, hopefully by, late January, February. But that is a concern of mine in terms of what will my basketball team look like going into, February, and what will March Madness actually look like? We're looking at the possibility or the potential of a complete calendar year without basketball, at least get to March Madness.
I agree with you in so many different ways in regards to how you look at basketball, that it's not looking good in terms of that, particularly for the non-conference. I think there's a chance that you'll probably see conference games being played only starting essentially in January, that it's going to be extremely hard to get the non-conference games in just on the trajectory that we're seeing, especially when you think about the fact that November and December is when you are hearing that the second wave actually is supposed to start because it's the start of that cold flu season, if you will. Hopefully by then we will have people starting to understand the importance of social distancing, wearing masks. We'll have some type of plan in place in terms of what's going to go through with K-12, that people have found out a plan of how to best manage that. You'll see it at the higher educational level, what takes place. We'll see the best practices hopefully taking place there will give us some indication. But in a lot of ways, I think that we'll see that taking place with non-conference basketball being shut down. So do you think conference play will be able to start in January in a lot of ways? And with that fact, are you more optimistic that their likelihood will be SWAC football and fall sports in the spring because people just have a better understanding of what's taking place with COVID-19?
I'm at least optimistic. And like I mentioned before, at least the plan gives me some optimism that now that you will have a population that takes COVID-19 a little more serious. And going through the process of missing your favorite teams, maybe it produces more awareness of the things that need to take place. We've been looking at this thing now since March sometime and trying to figure out, what's it going to look like going forward. Now we're starting to see the cascading effects of basically opening things back up too soon. Hopefully, absence makes the heart grow fonder in terms of what people need to do to see their favorite team. And you really are. I'm very optimistic that we can hopefully get to January to where we can see our respective favorite teams. So people, do what you need to do. Mask up, socially distance. If you don't have to be out and about, keep it in or stay in so that you can see your favorite teams come this spring.
So were you surprised with your drop? What did you think about your drop there as we start to close up on the show? Rob Calloway is on the move and unable to join us today as he's on the road and taking care of some business. So we're going to start to close out, but I wanted to get your final thoughts as I finally got you a little surprise in there as y'all were talking about me bad, and I couldn't turn off the mic as usual. So what do you think about the drop there?
Well, I'm sure being part of the miracles, Smokey Robinson, the miracles, at least one miracle was happy when Smokey mentioned his name back there. So I'm happy at least that we got to drop in. Very appreciative of it. It's great to be part of this team. Like you said, we take it serious in terms of talking about our HBCU sports and talking about the business of HBCU sports and talking about like you mentioned, the HBCU diaspora and all that it encompasses. So this is a labor of love and definitely appreciative of getting the drop out there. So looking forward to a lot more things that we're going to do going into this fall season.
Yes, thank you. With that, we'll bring it to the close. I want to remind everybody to follow us on social media platforms. Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, that's DrKenyatta Cavil. Again, it's DrKenyatta Cavil. That's on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Also follow us on Twitter. That's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter. You can follow us on Facebook at Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Follow us on BCSN. You can get the app now. Go and check for the app. Download the app in terms of BCSN. And so you can follow us as you on the road like Rob Calloway. You can still catch us right there live on the app as we continue to produce it and get you all this great information about the HBCU sports culture, the sporting HBCU diaspora, as I like to say, the HBCU athletic aesthetics in so many different ways. That'll do it for us. This is Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington Charles Bishop, presented to you by THG Agency. You can contact us directly at www.thg-agency.com. That's www.thgagency.com. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington Charles Bishop. As we come to the close, I hope you enjoyed our lecture today, our interview with Dr. Charles McClelland, the SWAC commissioner, giving you some insight on the ultimate decision that led to the postponement of the fall SWAC sports season and pushing it to the spring 2021 with a plan on how you're going to deliver the football conference schedule. I thought that was fascinating dialogue with some questions. I hope you got a great deal of information that you haven't been able to get anywhere else. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show with Mike Washington Charles Bishop every Tuesday right here, 6 to 7 p.m. right here on the live streaming platform, TCOH 1230 a.m. in Houston, Texas, right here on BCSN, Facebook Live, Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Check us out. If you can't catch us, check us on the recorded podcast at Spreaker.com. As we said, check out all the different platforms on how you can get us. Dr. Cavil Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Thank you for your time. We're out with that. We'll talk about, follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, DrKenyatta Cavil. Dream big and continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon.
Course lecture.
This is the HBCU Sports Lab radio show with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. Central on KCOH 1230 AM, Facebook Live, and as a podcast on streaming platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Podcast App.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean